So this Saturday ends our Saskatchewan Library Week every year in October. Hi, my name is Maria Five. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the most controversial banned book of 2024, Gender Queer. But before that, we're going to get into some tea and a tradesy make. So the tea today is cinnamon apple. And the reason why I chose cinnamon apple is because cinnamon is a spice and this could get kind of spicy. Anyway, yes, cinnamon apple, and this particular tea can leave me sometimes because I believe because of the combination of the tannins and the citric acid, it can give me heartburn sometimes. And so I just put a little bit of honey, just natural honey in it, and that tends to ease it. So this is cinnamon apple with a little bit of honey. It also tends to bring out the sweetness of the tea as well. Yeah, so that's the tea. And I don't know if you'll notice, but I have this wonderful library cup today. The make is this gorgeous bracelet with a lotus leaf. And because I'm also a yoga instructor, I have traded a pair of kitty earrings for this bracelet from my friend Carly. So, Carly, if you're watching, hello. So today's topic is going to be, I think, really interesting, but I'm here more just to talk about it, not to sway you, not to persuade you. That is never my intent. I never want to insult anybody. I never want to insult anybody's intelligence. Well, the odd writer maybe. But no, I'm really here. I think I would love to have a discussion. So let's see where this goes. This could take a few takes. It could take a few days for me to get all of this, because I feel quite strongly about this, and there's a lot I feel like I need to say about this. So first, I'm going to show you my t-shirt. I'm with the band, and you'll notice it's banned. In reference to banned books. Now there are lists of banned books. They range anywhere from 10 to 100. I mean, I think last count there was like 24, when I looked it up last time, there's about 2,400 books that had been challenged. Now, I find that really crazy. I mean, I'm not saying I've read every banned book out there. I haven't, of course not. But I have read quite a few of them, and not intentionally because they were banned, but yeah, some of them, and this one in particular, exactly because it was banned. And I mean, there have been articles, there have been like states, counties, like you name it, just really reacting to this book. So Gender Queer is a novel. No, actually it is not. It is a graphic novel. And so this is it's been an upward trend in novels, novellas. I should say I've only ever read one other graphic novel and very much like this. It was Coraline by Neil Gaiman. I love Neil Gaiman, and this was how it was originally presented, was as a graphic novel. I read the graphic novel. I loved the movie. But so this is the second graphic novel I've read, and I only read it specifically to talk about it, not because I love graphic novels. I don't. And I had to think about that as well. What is it exactly that I don't like about graphic novels? And all of that, I think, goes back to my days of reading comic books, and I'm going to say like grade 7, grade 8. And the only one I really cared about, believe it or not, was Conan the Barbarian. I know, it's kind of funny. Anyway, the artwork was superb. I loved the artwork in it. And then I feel like every comic book that I even opened up after that, the comic artwork wasn't what I liked, wasn't what I wanted, was obviously not something I found aesthetically pleasing. And so I simply never read comics, and then obviously did not transition into graphic novels. But lots of people like them, and hey, if that's what gets you reading, if that's what gets your kid reading, great. Absolutely. I mean, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. Anything to get people reading. Of course, I'm a little biased about all this, but yes, I totally agree. So on that note, Banned books is a really interesting topic. It's something I feel quite strongly about. If there is a book out there and it has a sensitive or touchy subject that people, A, makes them uncomfortable, B, they don't want to talk about, C, they would just wish never existed, to have it in book form, you can simply not buy the book. You could simply not read it. That's everyone's choice, of course, everyone's prerogative. I mean, I am predominantly a library. I buy very few books, actually, these days. I used to, trust me. But I buy very few books these days, and I'm predominantly a library user. So for me, the whole idea of banned books is much more prevalent. Having said that, this book, Gender Queer, was a little bit challenging to actually get a hold of, which goes with the whole idea of banned books and challenged books. It took me a second to clue into that. So, I could not find a hard copy. It didn't exist. I mean, not a soft copy, not an anything copy. And I eventually found a digital copy that I read on my iPad. So I read this graphic novel, second one in my life, and I do want to talk about that specific book, but I mean also banned books in general. So Maya Kobabe's Gender Queer book is a book that has been challenged in a lot of libraries throughout schools, high schools as well as elementary schools, middle schools for sure, depending on how the classes are broken up. It has been highly challenged, and I've read it, so I understand where people could have some concerns and say, I don't want my child reading that. And as a parent, I have a son. As a parent, I understand that. I totally get that. If I was running, which I have actually not had the experience other than in my practicums. I have not actually worked in a school library. But if you were a parent and you came to me, the librarian, and said, I don't want my child reading this, I find it too controversial, or I've heard negative things, however you phrase it, I can respect that. So somehow I would keep track that this child is not to be, checking out these certain books. When a parent says that, I would assume that they are coming into the library with some knowledge of something, and I 100% completely respect that. I mean, it's your responsibility as a parent, I feel like, to, you're allowed to have say in what your kid is and isn't reading. The reason why I was so possibly overboard is because my parents did exactly the opposite. I read whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. It wasn't always such an appropriate thing, but I didn't have anyone saying and doing anything. And I mean, not that I was scarred. I mean, I came out okay, but there were a couple of years there where I had nightmares. I was a little traumatized over stuff I was reading, which I was just reading at way too young an age. I mean, when you're in grade 7, you should not be reading John Saul, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe people are okay with that, but I wasn't okay with that. And yet nobody was going, you might want to wait a few. As a parent, I feel like, yes, that is within your right. If it's not core curriculum, if it's core curriculum and, the English, the language arts instructor is saying, this is the book we're taking, then you're taking on the whole school trustee board. I mean, that's a whole different can of worms. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about core stuff that may be controversial. I am simply talking about the library, a place to hold, that should hold space for absolutely everybody, should be completely inclusive. And that includes everything. It really does. And so I feel like all books should be there, including Gender Queer. You get what you need out of a book at any given time. And if I were to go back and reread a book that I had, and I've done this, I'm sure a lot of you have, I had this absolute favorite book, and I want to say I was 10 in grade 5. It was the very first time I think I'd ever played hooky, pretended I was 6 so I could stay in bed and read. It was the very first time I ever did this, grade 5, 10 years old. So this book would just completely, it was the first time I actually read a book and was transported magically to somewhere else. I was literally the moors of England. And all of a sudden I could hear the click of the door. My parents were coming home from work. It was 5 o'clock or 5:30, and I was like, oh my goodness. I hadn't touched my ginger ale. I hadn't touched my dry toast. I hadn't touched anything. So, fake it a little bit, and then it all worked out. So this book by Maia Kobabe is it's a self-story. It's how she decided she needed to come out. So she started writing more in journals than anything else, and it evolved into this graphic novel. And so part of her story was that she was in school and she was really figuring out her identity and who she was and if she was even a she, and had just had so many questions and was really confused that nothing fit, nothing gelled, nothing really worked. And so that was the place that Maia was coming from. In one of these, the author says that there was a Queer Straight Alliance group, the QSA, and it was a group that was starting up in the high school and inviting kids to come and participate if there was anything that they wanted to do, to ask, to find out. And so Maia joined. So that led to the door opening for Maia, and the journey continues. So in this graphic novel, it's about 250 pages. It's not insignificant. Literally discusses everything, absolutely everything and anything. This book touches on so many topics: periods, sexuality, asexuality, relationships, relating to other people, sexual expectations in a relationship, crushes, fantasies. There are all kinds of topics that this book touches upon. It explores words like gay, transgender, queer, and how Maia fit into this big, confusing mess. So there's all kinds of information out there, and I believe that you, as an individual, need to make your own decision and not decide on someone else's or by someone else's decision, regardless of whether a book is banned or not. The LGBTQIA2S plus community is growing. Within that community, pronouns are definitely something I feel like I just need to touch on briefly. So Maia uses Spivak pronouns that are completely gender neutral, and they are E, M, air, and S, ESS. These are just some of the options available. Everybody has their own, of course. But I feel like pronouns are a really safe and non-judgmental way to approach people, to address people, and to certainly respect people. Everybody deserves respect. I think personally that if there were questions of identity and how one identified and who one identified and did one even want to put a label on anything, I think this particular book, Genderqueer, might be incredibly helpful. I mean, it's a very personal thing because everyone has their own path. Everyone has their own issues, their own identity, their own relatability, and it's all good. But as a library, there should be space held for absolutely everybody. And it should be a safe place to read things that are not mainstream, that may be questioned. Yeah, one of the big things I think, I don't even know how controversial it was. I think there was a little bit of chatter about it though, was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. And that was like, oh my goodness, that was a bit, for me, a bit earth-shattering. It's just like there are other people that have the same ideas, the same thoughts that I do. And that's how this book is too. The author likes an awful lot of the same authors I like. I would say number one maybe being Neil Gaiman. But there's lots of different authors that Maya really likes, and I also really like. There's a lot of commonality. And so I think it's really important to have all the books available for everybody. And if you choose not to read it, that's okay. If you choose for your children not to read it, that is also okay. I feel like, yeah, you do have that, because if that child really wants to read it, they will read it. And if they're going to read it maybe at the age of 16 when you have no jurisdiction anymore, well, then they're going to read it then. So thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to comment, and please feel free to be respectful. Please feel free to be to comment and to be respectful with your comments, and hopefully I will be able to answer anything. And if you want to rant, that's okay too. All right. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. See you next Saturday. Take care. Bye-bye.